Good morning, everyone. It is the day after Thanksgiving, 6 a.m. at the crack o' dawn. Oh, I'm tired. Tryptophan, turkey, head's different, man. But I feasted in moderation, avoided the hangover, had a good time yesterday, and we are rewarded with our first look at Skulltaker campaign gameplay, an official walkthrough that is sure to enlighten us at the edge of a hellish demonic blade. Literally, it'll probably set you on fire. Now, before we jump to the campaign map, let's take a quick look at Skulltaker's faction effects and start position. His sub-faction name will be the Blooded Wanderers, with one of the stronger starting armies I've seen in quite some time. 3 Bloodletters, an Exalted Bloodletter, a Blood Crusher, Blood Beast, and a Blood Throne of Khorne. Now, this is already an army tailor-made for stomping out Gorok's balls. It's gonna rip through Skinks and Saurus in seconds flat, but it's actually probably worse than you think, because all Bloodletters in his army will have Frenzy, which you might be saying they're a Khornate unit. Of course they have Frenzy, right? Well, they actually don't. Demonic units don't get the Mark of Khorne, which means they don't typically have Frenzy innately built in. Bloodletters certainly don't. Skulltakers do, which means they will absolutely shred. This starting build may end up being a bit vulnerable to monsters or cav charges, but as we know, AI typically doesn't handle mounted troops very well, and I imagine you'll be able to quickly supplement your forces with Khorngors, which are confirmed by the devs to have armor piercing and bonus versus large, so they're essentially a Vanguard halberd unit. Extra campaign movement range, everyone and their mother and brother has that, it feels like, but always useful. Extra upkeep reductions of Bloodletters at 15%, doubled campaign line of sight to make finding enemy lords all that much easier, and he has a +2 hero cap on Blood Reapers, beginning the campaign with 1 nearby in your starting army. I'm assuming he has a higher base chance than other demonic lords to reforge crumbled demonic units, because I think this mechanic will apply to all demons and demonic factions in the game, including every mono god. But yeah, that's really cool that the devs recognized the inherent weaknesses of demonic choices and added something flavorful, fun, and ultimately beneficial, lore-friendly to help counteract that in the always intricate balancing act between mortal followers and creatures from the ether. One that Chosen and Mortals have been winning pretty hard since Champions of Chaos, because they're so much more durable and because they don't have to worry about disintegrating. Should be a mechanic that massively helps out Slaanesh especially, given how squishy their demons are and how bad their auto-resolve is. But yeah, Skulltaker will begin his campaign in Hualatl, the Guanji Valley, which is straight north of Gorok and Itza, I believe, about a province and a half away or so. Very close to Marcus Wolfheart too, who will not be surviving very long, I don't think, and northwest of Albrecht de Bordelot, who appears to be the Slayer's main nemesis, because he just can't stop killing the poor man. Interesting start location for sure. Very happy to see the return of the Lustrian Thunder Dome, but with his teleport mechanics to the Cloak of Skulls, you won't be forced into carving out an empire there if you don't want to. It's also a faction based on that famous Khornate momentum that finally has a ton of targets to choose from, and isn't exiled to some blasted wasteland in the way that Skarbrand the Exiled one is, with huge gaps between settlements where it's kind of hard to keep up that momentum. So let's jump into the official video and take a look at what's coming, because we got a lot of Skulltaker gameplay to glimpse at.
What you're about to see is pre-alpha footage of Owen to Destruction. This was recorded months in advance, so there's still some placeholders in game. We're really hard at work right now and can't wait for you to get your hands on it at release.
Hunter, deliberate, relentless.
The eyes of Khorne blaze down upon us.
Absolutely proficient in killing. Seek out your prey, bring it down, bask in the favor of Khorne.
So let's get reaping those skulls, humiliating those lords, and showing off that fancy cloak.
It's just bullying at this point.
Izu the Skulltaker. The Cranium Collector himself and champion of Khorne. His presence in the known world will chill the chainmail of any champion, as he seeks out worthy champions to display their skulls on his trophy case.
Alright, but that was kind of hot though. What that mouth do?
Of a cloak. Those unlucky enough to start their journey in Lustria will come face to face with him. Before we begin, if you're seeking a full list of updates coming with Omens of Destruction, check out our blog through the links below. We began our campaign at Hualotl in the Guanji Valley, a beautiful sunny climate for slaughter. Skulltaker is first and foremost a fighter.
Okay, so Uzul Skulltaker will begin his campaign in the Guanji Valley in Hualotl, and his first opponent subfaction will be a Tzeentch army directly to his east. Depending on what they start with, that might not actually be the easiest early fight for him. I'd actually argue he probably matches up better against Saurus than he does against Tzeentch, especially if there's horror spam. Pretty easy for Bloodletters to get torn down by magic missiles, by magic play in general, by magic range troops. So blue horrors and pink horrors can beat the brakes off them if you're not able to break through the front line quickly. With his powerful starting army, I don't think it's going to be much of an issue. Bloodletters with Frenzy is just pretty disgusting. You should be able to cut through the frontline troops without too much issue and not get shot up a whole lot. And you do have some mobility as well with that starting Blood Beast and with the Blood Crusher. But I'll be curious to see how that first battle goes. When it comes to his stats, medium armor, 60, what you'd expect from a demon. We've got 48 speed on foot, which is actually quite fast. 74 melee attack, 50 melee defense, 500 weapon strength, bonus versus infantry, armor piercing. On foot, he's going to be extremely powerful as a duelist. He's going to be a big threat to Gorok. With your starting Blood Reaper and him, I don't think Gorok stands any chance. And there are a lot of factions who really struggle with the Great White Lizard in the early game when he's on foot. I've seen lots of videos and gameplay of people completely surrounding him and being unable to kill him. In a similar way to Vlad, he of course does not have the regen, but he is extremely tanky with the Mace of Ulamak and the Shield of Eons. So a lot of factions struggle with him. I don't think Skulltaker will.
With strong melee attack and the Blooded Wanderer trait, increasing his campaign movement range and line of sight, allowing him to focus his efforts on his target. Execution! Basically, don't get in his way. Surrounded by disciples of Tzeentch, we quickly moved over to Queertax for the first step of our Skull Harvest. It was a modest result, which we raised for an additional Bloodhost army, expending our skulls in return for more momentum on the map. Our second attack was on Chakwe, and by this point, the lands had begun to bleed through with our corruption. The distant roars of the lizardmen just north of us have quelled, the result of Bretonnian maniacs crusading through the jungles. But they've stepped too far into these lands, and they don't know what awaits them. And so, turn 8. We've made our first attack on Albrecht's faction, raising Zahatek and spawning yet another Bloodhost army.
Skulltaker is a Khorne faction, so he abides by similar rules. You will be expanding towards your enemies, you will take over their settlements, you will sacrifice and raise them in the name of Khorne. However, we've introduced an interesting twist on this premise related to Skulltaker's Cloak of Skulls.
More on that in just a moment. We're playing a bit of a balancing game with our resources. Skulls provide us with Bloodhost armies, but we've got other uses for skulls now. Let's send one of our followers up to the settlement of Bragon to recover our lost skulls. It'll also provide a nice blow to Alberic, as raising a settlement now leaves it uninhabitable for other factions for a few turns.
So remember now, Bloodhosts do not cost any upkeep whatsoever. You're not going to be fighting in the red now. What you're going to be doing instead is spending skulls to summon those Bloodhosts, and skulls are going to be a, I think, fairly limited resource in the early game. They'll show it off in a minute here, but there are some very powerful abilities on the Skull Throne page that you're going to want to utilize as often as possible. So there's some actual decision making you have to undergo now, where do I get the big buff for my main force, the one that I'm going to be using most, or am I going to summon a Bloodhost army that may be able to take a minor settlement, but not much more than that?
Be gone, Bragon. That was terrible, sorry. Oh, hello. It's fine, I need the skulls. Outbreak is our first encounter with
Oh,
Legendary Lord.
shit! What? Albert, what is wrong with your Pegasus, dog? That thing looks like a chaos monster. That looks like it spawned straight from the warp. What the hell is that?
His reputation on the field means he is worth more to us than a generic lord. Defeating him will earn Skulltaker 60 points of...
Okay, so that's interesting. I was wondering about that, and that makes perfect sense. if you're Legendary Lord, you are going to double the effective amount of champion essence that you can reap from a single kill. And if you've already killed a Lord, I guess you'll get less. So Lord type not defeated plus 10, I imagine that would be 0 if you've killed Alberich before. So this isn't like an Altharion's Prison type of thing, Prison of Athel Tamarha. You're not going to be able to like kill a Lord and then keep them trapped because you have their skull. It's gamey, it's a little bit silly. You decapitate them, you flinch their skull, you put it on your cloak, and then he shows up later 3 or 4 turns anyway. But yeah, you will get less champion essence from a Lord if you've killed them before. So you can't farm them over and over and over and expect to just like skyrocket on that front. But as you will see, some of those skulls, as you reap more champion's essence, also have some really useful abilities. And there's one in particular that I think is going to completely change the game for Skull Taker, and it's kind of the entire thing this mechanic revolves around. It's really going to make him interesting to play.
Champion Essence, which we can spend on buffs through our Cloak of Skulls mechanic. His army is big though, so for now we'll leave him to his ruins and target Laxland. There is another tasty Bretonnian skull there I can harvest, worth 16 champion essence. Bit of an easier target for us at this stage of our campaign.
According to lore, the Skull Taker is a duelist. What he usually does is when, for example, Khorne forces are besieging a fortress, he stands before the gates of the fortress on his own and he issues a challenge. Sooner or later, someone marches out to face him, and
You have to be kidding me. Like, that's a joke. You sent Grandma Annie to go fight Skull Taker in melee combat. 1v1. What are they doing? Is she stupid?
they lose. Always, invariably.
Yeah, no shit.
You will see that each of them carries a different amount of champion essence, which depends on their level of experience and on the victories that they fought. This is a resource that you will gain once you face them in battle and you defeat them. And you will use this champion essence to enhance the skulls on the cloak.
That magistrate looked like he was ready. He was like, take me, Skull Taker. Take me now. I want it. Oh, take me, Skull Taker.
Use this champion essence to enhance the skulls on the cloak. Each of the skulls is giving you different bonuses. You can unlock.
Okay. Some really cool stuff here. Now, actually, a lot of what's on the screen right now seems kind of like meh. I mean, obviously, physical resist, melee defense, armor is nice, but it's not some crazy buff. I imagine that's only the level 1 version of Drongash, the Ill-Fated. Each of these 10 skulls representing greenskins, vampire counts, different races of the Warhammer world. I think there is a lieutenant of Cetra that's in there too, that's under the Herald Nakaf. Not Nakaf, but one of the other ones. One of the other heralds, I guess. Bunch of different characters that you reap their skull and they give you certain bonuses. You can level each skull up to level 3. Level 1 bonuses are obviously going to be weaker than level 3 bonuses. A lot of these look like level 1. But Mir the Indomitable is the big one. Ironneck the Wanderer, obviously campaign movement range after defeating a Lord, stacked with your other abilities, Eternal War, Unholy Manifestation, those kinds of things. You get a lot more movement range. You can do some pretty crazy stuff with that. Mir the Indomitable is the big one. Enables the ability to travel to enemy lords. This means you can teleport, which means if you have vision, you can go anywhere on the planet. That's also with changes to the cults that came. I had totally forgotten, by the way. Thank you for reminding me in the comment section of the last video. People had told me that there was a cult and Unholy Manifestation overhaul. There were some important changes made there. I think every Chaos faction now, every Mono God, has the ability to teleport their Lord out. So if you hate your start position, for example, Kairos Fateweaver, a lot of people really despise where he begins. You can use a cult to get across the map and just begin somewhere new. Obviously, you always had the opportunity to use mods for that kind of thing as well. But either way, Mir the Indomitable granting the ability to travel to an enemy anywhere means if you send out your heroes in the early game, you could go to Southlands. You could go to Lustria, you could go to the Chaos Wastes, you could get next to the Sea Lanes and utilize those to go to Cathay. You could pretty much go anywhere. The world is your oyster, and it won't take that long. You could carve out a little mini empire in Lustria in the early stages and then jump to anywhere you want to. And that's going to make for some pretty crazy gameplay. Now, I don't know what the cooldown on that teleport is going to be. I imagine it will start out fairly long and will get shorter as you level up the Mirror the Indomitable Skull. But I think that is a super cool, fun mechanic. I've always loved those teleport things, World Roots with the Wood Elves. Those kind of overhauls are super fun.
Bonuses, you can further upgrade them. So this is actually a chief part of your gameplay loop. Be on the lookout for meaty enemy lords with a lot of champion essence, attack them, gain their champion essence, become stronger, and seek other prey for you to hunt down.
Our Cloak of Skulls holds many abilities in its noggins. For example, the Cloak of Skulls ability.
So, a couple things here. Cloak of Skulls, gonna be useful. He's a duelist, so you don't want other randos hitting you in the flank or rear when you're fighting. They will show Kultyron later in the video. He actually looks like a generic Juggernaut, which I'm hoping is placeholder. I would like to see a different color. It looks like on the splash screen art, the official key art, he's golden. He's not in this video, but again, they have said that some of this is placeholders, so we'll see. Either way, he does have a Juggernaut mount, and on that mount, you got a big hitbox, so it's easier to get hit in the flank or rear. Being immune to flanking penalties is very nice, and it makes sense. He's got a big armored skull cloak behind him, makes it so he can't get attacked from the flank or rear. More armor, more missile resist. I guess those things are nice, armor especially. But the Blood God's Shackles is a pretty cool army ability. You'll also see that later in the video. What that does is, I think, lower melee defense by 24 and pin an opponent in place, which is very similar to what Eltharion the Grim is all about with his Prison of Athel-Tamarha ability. And essentially this allows you to close the gap and get the duel that you want. It heavily debuffs them, and then Skulltaker just rips them apart in melee.
Increases our armor and missile resistance, as well as making us immune to flanking. My original Bloodhost armies are clinging on by their claws, but they make up for the lack of recruitment I've made. Let's burn them up in one final battle and replace them as we move up north. Oh, hello Empire. What's this? Another tasty skull worth 16 essence points. Well, that'll take us past our threshold for the next skull on the cloak. I don't think I can turn that down. Let's give chase.
My favorite unit of the Skulltaker is the Blood Beasts of Khorne. Huge, brutish, ape-like monsters that are exceptionally good on the charge.
Yeah, so fairly large charge bonus for Monstrous Infantry. 135 weapon strength, majority AP, extremely high melee attack, and I'm not even sure that's accounting for Frenzy right now. That looks like they took that unit card. It doesn't look like Frenzy's active right now. So presumably that'd be more like, I think Frenzy is +8. So that would be 55 melee attack base, unless I'm crazy. 60 speed, so a little bit slower than heavy cavalry. But yeah, this is a bruiser. I mean, they're going to be squishy. Not insane HP pool, pretty standard for Monstrous Infantry. Very low armor and a big hitbox. They'll be susceptible to missiles for sure. But use them in tandem with cavalry, working alongside Scylla or Skull Crushers, Blood Crushers on the flank. They're going to be really useful in a cav fight or for cracking open armor.
They've got armor-piercing damage, they induce fear in their enemies, and they have a particularly cool animation.
From the top rope,
They're
my
particularly fun to use
God,
against
it is broken in half.
Goblins, you say? I hear rumors of goblin armies up in the old world. Perhaps a good spot for some champion hunting. Perhaps even a Karl Fartik trip. I'm sure he'd like to meet the official 100th legendary lord. That is decided, right? Skulltaker? 100th?
It's Arbol, you fool!
No one's going to question me. Oh, Marcus is making his way downtown. Let's move out the way and get some recruitment going for a welcome party.
The Khorngors in comparison to the Pestigors.
Okay, we got Khorngors. Now, this is interesting they are wielding what looks like a great axe, and you're going to see that in a second. Their melee defense is horrendous. 15 is crazy. That's really, really bad. But it's a bonus versus large armor-piercing unit using great axes. Now, typically great axes are considered great weapons. Every single axe unit I've seen in the trilogy is a great weapon, which means they don't innately have bonus versus large, and I can't think of another example to the contrary. But this is a halberd unit, basically. This is a vanguard deploying fast halberd unit. a fairly cheap one that will be available in the early game, should be really beneficial against both the Lizardmen and Bretonnia, Albric especially, because they have knights, they have armored big troops, they have dinosaurs. Getting access to quick armor-piercing bonus versus large, gonna be really useful to supplement your army. You won't need a lot of them, 3 or 4 maybe even less, but having those operate in tandem, especially with the Blood Beasts, will essentially cover your only major weakness.
Zangors bring forward a more aggressive, hard-hitting role. They feature all the best benefits.
Yeah, like it looks like a halberd, except the shaft isn't long enough. That's what she said. Like, the shaft would need to be a little bit longer for it to be a halberd unit, I feel like. It looks more like an axe. He's holding it like an axe. Now, obviously, there's a discussion to be had about where an halberd begins and an axe ends. Halberds have an axe head, essentially. But yeah, I mean, that looks like an axe to me. Just to clarify this part, I'm aware that it says Great Axe Infantry and that they are wielding axes. The reason I was having this conniption is the fact that there's no other axe unit in the game that I can think of anyway that has bonus versus large armor piercing. Usually great weapons are only AP. They don't have bonus versus large. As soon as they get the bonus versus large, they stop being an axe unit and start being a halberd unit, is basically my point. Very interesting. Very cool unit though. Oh yeah, and remember, they also have the Unbreakable passive. So I don't know exactly how it works, but once they take some damage, they will become unbreakable for a short duration, similar to the Buyer Blood passive from Kislev, which again, is going to be useful in campaign, no doubt, but this is going to be a really good unit, I think, in multiplayer, even with that terrible melee defense, just because they're going to be relatively cheap, relatively easy to put onto the field. They're always going to be where you need them to be because they have Vanguard and good speed. It's a good unit. And then when they're pressured, when they're attacked by a single entity monster, or something with terror, blah, 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 they're going to hold the line. They'll die fast, but they'll hold the line. They'll tarp it.
and qualities of the Mark of Khorne, and when they've taken enough damage, their ability will trigger, which will further enhance their melee prowess.
Alberic's forces are skulking around our lands. He'll likely regrow in strength, but with a higher population of skulls north of us, I think we'll head in that direction. I have something in mind for when Alberic is worthy of my attention, but let's also arrange some backup.
The Bloodspeaker is a new lord that plays a supportive role for Khorne. He specialises in buffing units around him, and when mounted, he adds that mobility.
People die when they are killed.
In order to boost our numbers further, we're going to utilise the Skull Throne, a new mechanic for Khorne that lets us spend our harvested skulls on more campaign buffs.
So they're not going to show off most of these here. I think they'll only end up showing 3 or 4. First one is next Blood Host will have +2 units created on creation of the army. There's
unlocked with the more skulls you spend.
+15 growth and +5 control.
And so, once Marcus is defeated,
That's nasty. Wordless Edict instantly replenishes faction leader's army. Now, if you're teleporting all over the map, you're going to be fighting a lot. Presumably, you're going to have some quest battles as well. Having access to something that instantly replenishes your entire army so you can keep the momentum up is a very big deal because it's tied into every single one of Khorne's mechanics, never ending your turn in an ideal situation. That's really good. As it says, it is placeholder. A lot of these are placeholders, so the positions might change around. Some of the abilities will almost certainly change. This is a months-old build. Instantly summoning a Blood Host to your faction leader is obviously very good. The Khorne technology tree, I have not looked at the new overhauled variants of it, but I imagine it's still going to have a lot of ways to increase the number of units in your spawned Blood Hosts, and also the quality of those units, including stuff like Blood Crushers, Bloodthirsters, those kinds of things. The further you get into the tech tree, usually, the better those units are going to become, and the more units will spawn in your Blood Host armies. Having one spawn at your faction leader, especially in a mid to late game scenario, is extremely good. I will be curious to see the skull economy and see if we have the ability to do this often, or if this will be like if 8,000 skulls is indeed a ton. Before, you'd be rolling in them, before the patches here, before the Khorne overhaul, you'd be rolling in skulls. You have way more uses for spending them now, so not sure how that balance is going to work out, but I mean, some of these abilities look like they're going to be very good.
Reduce my spend on Blood Hosts and begin building my way up the throne. For now, I'll select Blood Ex Nihilo, which spawns us 2 extra units for our new Blood Hosts. blood may be for the blood god, but today, the skulls are for our cloak.
Montage moment. Oh, that's sick. I love Juggernauts, dude. I wish they were a little bit better. Blood Crushers are not an amazing unit. They are really fun. And they're good in campaign. They do have some problems. New Coordinate ability does a Vortex of some kind. Probably an army ability would be my guess. Or Regiment of Renown ability.
It's turn 57, and we're deep in the jungles of Powalaxa. Lizardmen skulls are nice and all, but they look a bit out of place on my cloak. Regardless, the champion essence I've extracted along their Sutta-like roads has fully unlocked my target tier.
Now, one thing I am very curious about is Dubois the Prussian, I would imagine, is a Bretonnian, but Skulltaker gains plus 50% of the experience of the defeated lord. What does that mean? Does that mean if I kill an Albrecht de Bordelot, who's turn 40, level 40, that doesn't mean I get half of that experience? Does it? No, that's certainly not. Like, that'd be insane. That'd be like 20 levels of... No, there's no way. There's no way that's what that means. What does it mean? Skulltaker gains plus 50% of the experience of the defeated lord. Like the experience that the defeated lord would have gained in that battle? I think you still get XP even if you lose a battle with the lord. I know you get XP for heroes if you fail a hero action. I really don't know. All other lords gain plus 5% of the experience of the defeated lord. Yeah. I mean, that could be really good or really bad depending on how it's implemented. Or maybe I'm just being dumb and I'm just not grasping. Let me know in the comment section. I'm not sure. No name of the Hoarfrost. They hadn't named him yet. Replenishes 30% campaign movement range after defeating a lord. So that started out at 10%. Now it's 30%. Yeah, that's very cool. That's very good. And then Mirror the Indomitable enables ability to travel to enemy. So yeah, that's going to be a long cooldown one. Then you reduce that by 50% in terms of the travel cost, which will probably be skulls, I would imagine. Or it could... yeah, it's probably skulls, not champion essence. And then travel cooldown minus 5 turns. It's probably a 10 turn cooldown thing. So you're cutting it in half, would be my guess. Awesome.
Ability to teleport Skulltaker to lords he deems worthy to fight. Bad news for Albrecht, who in my absence has been raiding my settlements and attempting to recover his dignity. He's doing fairly well. Oh, he's taking back Laxland. And yep, he's taking out Itza. 96 points of essence. I think it's time. Before our attack, we'll utilize the Skull Throne one more time. We've amassed a hefty pile of skulls and can replenish our army to its full health.
So good. That's so good. I bet that'll be MVP of the whole tree. Skull Reapers. Tyron. A little bit generic right now. Hopefully it gets a little bit more love.
It's definitely got to be the Slaughter Brute. It's this large hulking creature that has very little that can stop it in combat.
Such an awesome model.
Very proficient in taking down its enemies.
Okay, so the tether ability that it had on the tabletop where it would take the weapon skill and leadership of the overarching lord has been replaced by Unbreakable, essentially. If your lord is alive and not routing, the Slaughter Brute will be unbreakable, which means in campaign, this monster will always be unbreakable. Bonus versus infantry, armor piercing, 500 weapon strength. Yeah, it's scary. Large melee attack value and frenzy. I don't think frenzy is even active right now, so it'll be higher than that. 73, I guess. unless I'm being dumb. Yeah, I mean, this is going to be a really good single entity monster. There's not much to it. You throw it in and it kills stuff. Zilla!
The Anthem Grim can be summarized as kill for Khorne. It's all we can say. It's going to be the last thing you hear, and he's very good at it.
Interesting. So, remember, just because it doesn't have the armor-piercing signifier on it doesn't mean that he's not very large values of AP. It just means it's below a 50-50 split. It could be like literally 1 AP value less. But yeah, 550 is very high weapon strength, obviously. Bad melee defense, bad armor. He's going to be a large target. So again, squishy. I think Blood Beasts in general are going to be squishy to missile fire, focus fire, more so than other single entities. Everything in the game dies to focus fire from missiles, but these guys are going to die to it in a particularly egregious way. With that said, as we talked about yesterday, he does have some very cool abilities, like that Mortis Strain from his Serpentine Tail, that should make him very powerful, and he'll be a good hunter of enemy lords characters, and especially, I think, cavalry. Use that mobility, that 65 speed, out on the flanks, and he can hunt some stuff and really cause some issues. Then you slam him into the main line once the ranged troops are shut down, and Mortis Strain everything. It's going to be really good.
Scar Bloodwrath is
That stat line is scary. He's going to be really a good hero, legendary hero. He's got Armor Sundering, 60 melee attack, base, 460 weapon strength, bonus for infantry, and AP. And as they're about to explain, essentially his entire thing is about not dying. When he drops low, he gets a life-saving burst of HP, similar to Tyrion's Heart of Avalorn or a Phoenix. And he has regen in melee, essentially Gorfy. So it's going to be hard to dislodge him, and he has 70 charge bonus. Was that more than Scylla? I think it was. What's Scylla's at? Scar Bloodwrath has 74 charge bonus. Scylla has 60, which means Scar, even though he's like twice as small as the Red Rage Gorilla, has better charge base anyway. But do remember that Scylla does get Glorious Charge and a couple other buffs to his charge speed, mass, and momentum speed, essentially. So Scylla's charge bonus will be better than that, and I imagine he's going to hit like an absolute goddamn truck when he gets into the flank or rear of an opponent.
Scar Bloodwrath is our frontline hero who's themed around both self-revival and healing. He's going to be very difficult to take down.
So
The
cool.
Wrath Mongers is
Gotta
a
love
unit
that model.
battlefield the players will get behind, and that's primarily because of their weapons, the Wrath Flail.
Yep, so as expected, this is essentially an armored Doomseeker equivalent of the Khorne roster. Really big weapon strength, bonus for infantry, armor piercing, large charge bonus. But the thing I really want to call your attention to, model count, 32, small, large HP pool, 9,600. So huge HP pool per model. I mean, their stats are insane. Like, they are going to blend any infantry they get their hands on. You just probably don't want them to get charged. If you prevent them from getting charged by a great weapon unit or a bonus for infantry unit, something like Blade Dancers, for instance, they wouldn't really love fighting. I mean, they'd give as good as they'd get, probably, but it would hurt them. Avoid getting hit by that charge bonus initially, and this unit's going to just rip and tear like Doom Guy. Absolutely insane stats.
That enables them to deal devastating splash attacks and in general just hard arm
And they have
piercing
splash attacks too. Skull Reapers.
The Skull Reapers are similar to the Chaos Warriors of Khorne. While they have less armor, they are in no way less effective in combat. They are absolutely devastating against him.
So they are still elite. If you look at that stat line, they are still what I would consider to be like an elite unit. Now, Khorne, of course, their low tier stuff is still hitting well above its weight class and price point and all of that. The Skull Reapers, again, on tabletop were a little bit more elite than this. It seems like they've kind of moved them down a slight tier. But if you were worried about them becoming like a mid-tier unit, I wouldn't worry too much about that. They have the exact same weapon strength as the Wrath Flails of the Wrathmongers. Large melee attack value. They have Frenzy, pretty significant charge bonus for an infantry unit. The one thing I will say about their design, love them from an aesthetics perspective. I think they're going to be fun. I wish they hadn't gone for the dual weapon variant here, or that we had gotten the dual weapon variant and the great weapon variant. I believe in the source material, they can use both. The great weapon, if I could have picked one, I would have rather they be great weapons, because Khorne doesn't have a lot of that on their roster. They have tons of dual weapons right now. There's a lot of overlap on that front. My guess is they didn't want to give them the great weapons because they don't want to step on Nurgle's whole shtick, because they've kind of decided, hey, Tzeentch will get halberds, Nurgle will get great weapons, Khorne will get dual weapons, blah, blah, blah. But at some point, I think that those walls, those barriers need to be broken down a little bit. I don't think it's like, it's not like Khorne can't bring great weapons, right? Like, we literally see that on the Khorne Gores. I think it's strange that they decided to go for the dual weapon variant here, because it's kind of the exact same vibe that we're getting from a lot of other units, Chaos Warriors with dual axes, and from the Wrathmongers. So I think the great weapons would have been a little bit more unique of a niche on this roster.
Infantry whilst being cost effective.
I've been trying to get Alberic all battle, but he keeps flying around. This should trap him in position for us. Alberic may have recovered from our initial meeting, but upon his triumphant return, he has only proved himself a more worthy opponent to the Skulltaker. With his glory finally in view, the Cloak of Skulls, will Skulltaker live up to his name?
That's a cool shot.
Let us know in the comments below, or follow our links to wishlist now.
Good stuff, man. It looks fun. This campaign, I think, is going to be a lot of fun. I'm very much looking forward to it. Let me know what y'all think in the comment section below, and I'll see you all in the next video. Any Pride, signing out for now. Have a good one, guys.